Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at turbotax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at turbotax.com/beatyourprice.
What the hell is wrong with you, man? Don't you ever grab me when I got a gun in my hand. Shit. You got blood on my coat, Easy. It's a damn expensive coat.
Hello and welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I'm one of the two hosts of this top-notch podcast.
And I'm Rich and I'm the other host of this top-notch podcast. Think of me as Doc Brown to Dave's Marty. He's the coolest 80s kid you've ever seen and I'm the slightly creepy old man friend.
Yes. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we quite often drift off and talk about some other things. Sometimes movies, sometimes life in general.
And sometimes we do drop big fat spoilers to films you might not have seen. So if that doesn't happen, press pause, go change the light bulb in the hallway. You've been meaning to do it for ages. And then come back, because on today's episode, we are joined by Tim Robey.
Tim is a brilliant journalist. He is the film critic for the Telegraph, when you will have seen his reviews because they are awesome. But he's also written a fantastic book called Box Office Poison, Hollywood's story in a century of flops, which is right up our street for this podcast.
We're very excited to sit down with Tim and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Tim Robey's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy!
Okay, we have got a little question for you to warm up the brains before we go on to the big questions. Great. And that first question is, can you remember the first sequel you got excited about?
I reckon the first sequel I ever saw was probably Jaws 2. And that was nice. At an age when you don't really notice the difference between a good film and a bad film, or a bad sequel and an incredible first film. You just kind of go, there are sharks again, and even more people are going to die, and I'm still going to like this film. So I was probably like 9 or 10 or something like that, and I reckon we rented it among some school friends, and we watched Jaws 2. I'm not going to say I was I guess I was kind of excited, but then one of the films I'm going to mention I was very excited about because I read the novelizations.
Right.
Okay.
These films, I'm not going to spoil which, but then I guess then when I became a proper kind of like slightly more discerning teenager, I guess Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Everyone was absolutely out of their minds to see that because most people had found it on video already if they were 12 or whatever at the time. And so when the second one came along, that was a big deal.
I remember watching like Terminator 2 when I was about 9 with my family, like it's some sort of family movie. And I'm like, there's a bit where everyone dies in a nuclear explosion. People are turned to dust. I'm 9. I shouldn't be watching this.
To be fair, actually, I've missed one out, which is one that I'd have gone to the cinema for, which is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989. I definitely remember family trip to see that. I was 11. And yeah, we were excited. I don't actually love that film all that much these days, but at the age of 11, I absolutely did. And yeah, I do remember the Petra bits and finding the whole stuff in the temple at the end really incredible.
Yeah.
I've got so many questions. Right. Had you seen Jaws 1 by the time you saw Jaws 2?
That's a very good question. And I'm assuming I must have done, because I feel like even at the age of 9 or something, we wouldn't have like gone about it in the wrong order.
Yeah.
We'd have watched Jaws and then we would have gone, guess what? There's a Jaws 2 as well. And then we'd have moved through. I don't remember watching Jaws 3 though. I feel like that must have come later. But yeah, we definitely did.
You would remember Jaws 3 if you'd seen it, right? I think
It
would have stuck.
I think it would. Yeah, I think I caught up with that like quite a lot later. But I just remember, even more people are going to be stupid and are going to die is basically the theme of Jaws 2.
Basically.
Yeah, so many people just make so many stupid decisions.
Well, we've watched so many bad sequels now. Jaws 2 is actually quite good in our eyes.
Is it better than most? Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's aged better than some of the other Jaws' films, and there's a subplot about Brody dealing with his PTSD and alcoholism if you really dig into it. I love the fact that you can't remember it. So Jaws 1 is one of those films that absolutely shit me up, and I couldn't go near water or watch sharks again for many years. I couldn't bring myself to watch another shark film. Were you not scared at that age of anything like that? Or was it just fun?
I think we were scared of sharks because of those two films, but the two films just kind of fused together. We might have even watched them back to back, So it was basically like 3.5 hours of shark terror that we absorbed and somehow thought was very exciting and somehow managed to get to see at that age. I don't know quite how we pulled it off.
Oh, you always convince someone's mum or dad that someone said you could see it. Yeah.
A very, very gullible babysitter, and I saw RoboCop and Fly when I was much too young to watch those. Right? Yeah.
Is that
Brilliant.
right? How did you used to watch film? Was it used to be like a video shop Friday or something like that?
Yeah, very much so. We had this newsagent in our little village high street called Double Two News, which is now some kind of bougie like cycle cafe. But back then it was basically a sweet shop with a massive video section in the back. And we would just rinse the shelves of that shop. And we would know whenever anything new had come in, we would spot it and go, oh, they've got a new horror. They've got a new Children of the Corn or something like that. And we would just go and rent that, but maybe 2 or 3 others. My younger brothers and I. So they were probably getting an even more kind of hardcore plunge into the kind of the world of genre cinema than I was.
So you're that brother that makes...
I'm afraid, I'm the old one who destroyed their lives. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think Rich is that person as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely that person. Yeah. I'm the one who rented like Pulp Fiction at like, I think I was like 13, which my brother would have been 10. Getting halfway through and going, no, you're too young for this. I'm too young for this.
I think The Fly was particularly triggering, and even the babysitter.
Yes,
The Fly.
She kind of made an error, and I think she basically sent my younger brothers to bed about 45 minutes into the film, but then let me stay up, which caused undying controversy. They were absolutely furious.
Yeah,
been allowed to see like the acid on the
bit. It's so well done.
We had like a younger couple in our street that used to like come and look after us when my mum was out and stuff, and they just let us watch anything. And we definitely watched The Fly with them, which things like Bloodsport and Kickboxer and things like that. And I think that's where we kind of watched Predator, all those kind of things that you probably shouldn't watch at like 5 or 6.
Yeah. There's nothing more exciting than getting to see like contraband shit when you're in your like in your formative years, and you know that it's naughty and you're not supposed to be allowed it. But it's a bit like smoking around the back of the bike sheds. You just kind of get away with it.
It's even best when you're doing them both, right? Smoking and watching see.
Yes. I used to skive off regularly from school to go to the cinema because it's one place you could smoke and not get caught. So, hence the film love, where that's come from.
Yeah. Do you think that all crafted your love for film from that young age? Because every film you've just mentioned is an absolute banger, pretty much.
Yeah, there's a lot of iconic films around that time. I think I grew up at a good time to get excited about that kind of stuff, I would say. And also like the birth of VHS, it was all suddenly on a plate and you could just access it quite easily, all of that. That was probably quite a big part of it, actually, yeah. And my dad works a bit in the industry. He works in film insurance.
Right.
So he was working at Pinewood Studios while we were growing up. Right. And we would go and visit and he would say, there's the set from Aliens and there's the set for Batman. And like, because they were shooting these films right there. And so we just like pointed out and we would kind of go, wow, that's great.
Oh, right. So you registered what was going on, old enough for that?
I guess I would have probably been around 10 around then, or 9 or 10. And I kind of developed an enthusiasm then. I remember him then starting to take us to cast and crew screenings, which occasionally he would go along to. So I went to the cast and crew screening for The Living Daylights, 1987.
Yeah.
I was 9, but I like that film a lot. I still like that film a lot.
That's the Timothy Dalton one, right? That's
first Dalton one. Yeah,
it's quite violent.
Incredible scene out the back of the plane where the net falls out and the guy is hanging onto his shoe. It's one of the best stunt sequences in any Bond film. The really violent one, which I then also went to, was License to Kill, 1989. That's the one where they start trying to almost copy like Chuck Norris movies, and like it becomes genuinely quite nasty.
Yeah.
But the first Dalton, I think that's a good film. And then Alien 3 was another one that I remember my dad taking me to. And of course, every one of these, my brothers were just like fuming because they were like, where's he allowed to go? And my dad would be like, well, you're 5.
Yeah. You're not quite old enough yet. My son is begging me to take him. Well, he really wants to see Venom 3, but he also hates the cinema, so he's not keen to actually go to the cinema to watch it. And I was like, you aren't old enough. I can't take you. Even if you want, even if I was going to get you through the door, then I can't take you, because he's absolutely obsessed with Venom. He loves it. And I was very much in trouble with my wife for letting him watch those 2 movies previously. But yeah, I can't stop him watching 3 now. That's it. He's very excited.
Yeah. Do you still get excited for sequels now than you used to? Or is it a different kind of playing field now?
Very rarely, I would say, because you just kind of roll your eyes and go, not another one. I mean, it's just that they're not these days generating sequels to anything that I liked in the first place.
Yeah.
Really. Generating. I did have quite a lot of time for Inside Out too. I thought they'd made some really good decisions on that. I thought the new emotions in it were extremely good and actually funnier than the old emotions. They'd really kind of upped their game with them. So that was good, but that was unexpectedly good in a way, because it could have been like any other Pixar sequel recently, and they've not been that great.
No.
But I am seeing Alien Romulus tomorrow.
Oh.
So tomorrow morning. So
I'm quite excited for that.
I'm booked in to see it on Friday at the moment. It looks really good. We'll get onto Alien films in a bit, I believe. Actually, this would be a good time to go onto it.
Yeah.
What a link. What is your favourite sequel ever?
Unavoidable, because I just thought about it for 5 seconds and I couldn't choose anything else with a clean conscience. It's Aliens. And you must have had that chosen by other people a few times, but
yes,
I just think it is the one. And I will. My other choices for your other categories are a little bit more offbeat, but with this one, I just went basic. Route one. It's the most sophisticated and satisfying sequel that I know in every way.
Yep.
And as I mentioned a minute ago, I was already excited for it because I read the novelizations of those books before I even saw the film. Alan Dean Foster, who's a sci-fi writer, did the novelizations, the official Fox produced books for the first 3 Alien films, and I just hoovered them up when I was like, whatever I was, 9 or 8 or 9, and so I would have read Aliens even before I saw it. So there are scenes in the book, in the novelization, which are not in the theatrical cut of Aliens. And I was kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? But nonetheless, it did not lessen my excitement when I eventually tracked it down, which would have been on VHS in probably about 1989 or so, something like that.
So a few years after its release, I know you read the novelizations, had you seen Alien at that point?
Yeah, I think I would have rented them both.
One day.
And maybe not back-to-back viewings, but I definitely saw Alien first. I had a friend called Toby who was even more into the whole Alien sort of mythos than I was, and he'd read them before me. And he was like, we've got to see Alien, and then we've got to see Aliens. And then we've got to eventually see Alien 3. And then I remember buying the like Alien special edition in like 92, whenever that came out, and being very excited for that because it had like an extra 20 minutes of footage and so forth.
Brilliant.
But nothing quite prepares you for your first viewing of either of the first 2 films, I don't think.
No.
I think Aliens is one that I thought would come up more than it has. So I think we've had it 3 times before.
Right.
So sort of every other season it pops up. So you're our fourth pick of Aliens. And I genuinely thought it would be, every 3rd movie someone would be talking about it, because it's such a brilliant sequel. It's so different to the original, whilst also keeping all the things that are good about the original. It's such a really classic example of a sequel that I thought we'd see more of it.
It's such an incredible extrapolation from the original idea, and the original idea is great anyway. And like the way they refined it and got the script exactly right for the first Alien, and realized that it could be this kind of chamber movie in space, and the level of acting they got on board and everything, it's kind of immaculate. But then for James Cameron to kind of look at it and go, okay, what can I do now that just kind of explodes it in a way, and kind of just raises the stakes, raises the intensity of it, enlarges the whole thing, and kind of doesn't betray the original in any way, but answers certain dangling questions that are left by the original. You know, where have the eggs come from is the great one. Cameron's able to answer that, create a truly iconic new character in the shape of the queen bitch alien, and simultaneously convert Ripley from an already fairly iconic character into an extraordinarily iconic character who is probably the great female action heroine of all time in cinema, I think. And this is James Cameron, who was pretty good at doing that. You know, he'd already had Linda Hamilton in Terminator, and would give her a great chance in Terminator 2. But I think Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is the one. And then for him to also raise his game. In fact, I don't think there's a better James Cameron screenplay than Aliens. It's quite easy to sort of be a little bit sniffy about his screenwriting, okay? And people were pretty rude about the dialogue in Titanic, a lot of the dialogue in Avatar, quite a lot of the characterization in Avatar and the second Avatar, not hugely great, I don't think. But with Aliens, I just think he just decides on which archetype each of these minor characters is, and then gives them the perfect dialogue to spark off each other and to kind of generate camaraderie and tension and friction, and then spark off Ripley as well, and just everything that goes on, even in the first hour of the movie, in which not a great deal happens, to be honest. The first hour of the movie is a bunch of Marines go to the planet and wonder what the fuck is going on, basically. But each of those scenes just, I think, develops those characters really so well, and also does a thing that Cameron is really good at, and I think he's better at it than Ridley Scott, which is to kind of lay out the geography of the whole film for you. So you kind of step by step, you head in there, and you have these kind of landmarks where you know where you are, and you kind of later on that comes back and really pays off, because you know exactly where you are when they've got to the med lab, and we see that location, and then we've seen all the other bits. So when it all really kicks off later and everything starts just going wild, we know exactly where we are. And I think in Alien, if I've got one critique of Alien, it's that I get a little bit lost on that spaceship. I don't know where everything connects to everything else. So when Ripley's wandering around at the end trying to find the cat, I'm like, where is this bloody cat? Where is the escape pod? Are we on it yet? I don't know. Where's this ladder going to? I just don't know where I am. And I don't think James Cameron makes that mistake. He's almost too anal. He's too specific about his locations and exactly where everything is.
And they have the little device thing where they can, the thing that bleeps, there's the stuff of Dave's nightmares. That bleeping device gives him the shivers. But yet that sort of helps with knowing where you are, right? Because that kind of like, that's how they track where they are in the ship and where the aliens are.
It's really good. And that's another thing borrowed from the Tom Skerritt scene in the first one, where you kind of sense the alien getting closer to him, but you don't understand how. And again, Cameron takes that idea and he kind of uses it to map out the whole film, really.
Were you a brave boy and it didn't scare you when you first saw it? Or did you just think it was cool?
I definitely thought it was cool, and I found it pretty overwhelmingly exciting.
Okay.
I think I probably am more scared, or was more scared, by the first film initially.
Okay.
Just because there's something about the idea of the alien, the gestation, that I find scary. Like when it's inside John Hurt, and I'm talking not necessarily the first time I saw it, but like subsequently, just the idea of it, and just the kind of sinister, like, oh God, it's in there. It's biding its time. It's gonna burst out. And then the fact that you realize that Ash knows that, and Ash, as Ian Holmes' character, is kind of eyeing him across the table and just waiting for it to happen. That creeps me out almost. That's genuinely sinister.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the second one which quite matches that, although I do think that Paul Reiser's character is sort of evil incarnate, and his attempt to his attempt to kind of impregnate Ripley by putting the face huggers in there in the med lab is a great sequence, and that's the scene which I'll probably be jumping backwards away from the screen. You know, if when the face hugger jumps up at her and up at Newt, that scene, it really is quite something.
Yeah.
And if Alien Romulus is any good at all, it will have a couple of those moments because there's so many face huggers flying around in that film we can see.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So is Aliens to you better than Alien? Because that's another debate a lot of people have on this.
I did not used to think so, and I would usually argue Alien because there's a sense of purity about Alien. It's kind of like it came up with the idea. H.R. Geiger's design is just so incredible in that film. I love the music in Alien, Jerry Goldsmith's music so much. There's so many things about it from a design point of view that are just kind of Ridley Scott's Ridley Scott at his very best, really. Even that, I mean, I put it pretty much on equal par with Blade Runner. But then over the years, I've probably watched Aliens more often, and I've started to appreciate exactly what Cameron brings to the table. That's slightly over and above that, and I'm just sort of slightly in awe of it. It just keeps escalating from about that hour point onwards. The escalation is incredible, and like where most films would peak and then just breathe a huge sigh of relief and kind of end.
Yeah.
Alien bolts on a whole other bit where, you know, the bitch is on the ship. Oh my God. We're going to go through another incredible. It's like a roller coaster that kind of reaches the bottom and then somehow just like swoops right back up the top again and gives you another bit. Like it requires so much skill to pull that off and not just the audience feeling a bit like cheated or exhausted.
Absolutely.
And then, again, there are many other elements of Aliens that I appreciate a lot. Again, James Horner, who's not a composer I always like very much, but that might be his best score. And just that anvil noise that he brings in Bishop's Countdown that comes in twice at the end there is truly iconic and like used in trailers forever for a reason. The acceleration of it is incredible. I really like so many of the supporting cast as well. I think Michael Biehn is so underrated, and he's just like absolutely perfect in that role. Lance Henriksen is great. Jeanette Goldstein is great. There are so many. Yeah, and I think the more I watch Aliens, the more I appreciate it. Whereas my admiration for Alien has remained kind of fixed and high for forever.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
How do you feel about the subsequent movies after Aliens? And does that damage the first two at all?
It's a rocky ride. I'm capable of being mildly disappointed with some of them and like really disappointed with some more. I've actually got to rank them all tomorrow after I see Romulus.
Oh wow, okay.
Ask for the week is to do for the Telegraph a kind of let's rank all the Alien films. So
is that including AVPs?
I think it will be including those.
Well, at least you've got a bottom.
Oh yeah, I know. We know which one comes last.
I need to remind myself how much worse Requiem is than AVP.
A lot.
So I probably Requiem, yeah. But I would have thought, to answer your question, I would have thought that Romulus has a fighting chance of coming third.
Yeah.
If it's pretty good, because there are so many things obviously wrong with the third and fourth films. I think have more affection for those two films than I do for Prometheus or Covenant.
Right.
Okay.
Where despite the fresh ideas they're trying to bring into play, I feel like with Prometheus, I just don't think they all belong in the same film. It feels like such a kind of weird medley of ideas in a mess. And I can see the reshoots. I look at it and I go, no, there's no one in the scene that is in the rest of the film at all. And you've cheated. And the characterization is so inconsistent. And there are so many like jumps in logic and so on. And like, I don't know, I was quite frustrated with that film. And with Covenant, I was frustrated in a different way, because there's one little sequence in it that I really like, which is when they run back to the ship in a state of panic when the first guy has been infected. And those two actors are freaking out, panicking, making all the worst decisions.
Oh, yeah. They keep slipping over. It's like a comedy scene.
They kind of fuck each other up. And I buy into that because I think they act it really well. And I think that little 10-minute section up to there, I was like, this is tense and quite good, even though there's I don't know what these creatures are that are crawling out of the back. I'm like, why have we got new ones? I don't really understand some of those decisions, but the rest of Covenant, I was then like, no, what are we doing? We're in kind of Michael Fassbender's Land of the Pharaohs, in some weird temple, and I don't really understand. So Covenant let me down, and the life cycle stuff in it is ridiculous. Like how quickly they are born, that really bothers me. I'm like, what was wrong with the John Hurt one? Was there something deeply wrong with that alien that it took like a day or two to come out, and seemingly they came out in 15 minutes in these other films?
Did you find yourself shouting in the cinema, "Stop getting aliens wrong"?
I mean, it was very much a part. I felt very Partridge. When I was watching that one. But I'm not alone. It's a shambles. The third and fourth ones, I think, have different strengths and different weaknesses. Yeah. There's a massive momentum problem in Alien 3, and you just kind of like the kind of like overriding gloom of it just gets a bit oppressive. It's not much fun.
I think the major problem with Alien 3 is all the interesting things happen off screen. Like,
that is a huge thing.
Yeah. like Michael Bihn's character dying, Newt dying, Ripley being impregnated, essentially. You know, all that happens off screen, like just
before the movie,
before it even starts.
Also, it gets off to such a bleak and gloomy start because they've created such a lovely little family unit at the end of Aliens.
Yeah,
it's a bit like, I don't know, doing the sequel to Meet the Parents and going, but then his family all died, and just like we would begin like, oh right, they're all dead.
Yeah,
right. Okay. So that immediately I'm like, oh, right, okay. And then you're on this quite depressing prison planet. I think Charles Dance probably has the best character, but he's the one who dies first. There are so many accumulating problems with it. And you can see that David Fincher just had a total nightmare.
Oh yeah,
making it and fighting against Fox and having it taken away from it. It just kind of screams conflicting visions and crisis. And I think Sigourney Weaver comes out of it quite well, but I enjoy how much fun she's having in Alien Resurrection. That's one of the redemptive things about that film for me, is that she's given the chance to really kind of rock out a little bit and sort of play this sort of quite almost cartoonish version of Ripley who we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And she really enjoys herself doing that. And the better moments of that film are really quite fun. I like the underwater bit. I think that's nicely done. And again, apparently they all had a total nightmare shooting that sequence, but it's worth it because that's one bit of novelty that the other films don't have, and it's tense. I think some of the Joss Whedon dialogue is quite annoying, and it's ultimately sort of, it's a bit Alien for Dummies, that film, but I don't know, it's fine. It's sort of a Friday night popcorn movie version of the Alien film, with a few goofy ideas like the kind of weird half-born mutant hybrid thing that gets sucked out of space at the end, whatever they thought they were doing with that. I don't know. Who knows? So that's my rough rundown of it. And who knows where Romulus will slot in? If it's good, it will be third.
Fingers crossed. Do you think that shows how well Aliens has aged from 1986, since the first time you saw it, that it's still that high up on your rankings?
Yeah, it has aged so well. The last time I saw a new release and I thought about Aliens much was Mad Max Fury Road I was watching. And I was like, I don't think I've seen an action film, I can't think of one since Aliens, which so palpably relies on like tactile effects and the amount of stunts they did.
Yeah.
They just went out and shot the damn thing. And there's the exhilaration of watching that kind of in action again after so many years of Marvel just cheating and throwing CGI at every sequence, you know.
I love that word, cheating. I've never...
I mean, I call it cheating. Sorry.
No, it's good. I like it.
No, it's right.
I'm stealing it.
Yeah.
And you can tell because that's the stuff that doesn't last. You know, practical effects look good 20 years later. CGI doesn't. You know, that's the standout.
It's the magic of it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like those sets on Aliens when they're going through and there's just a nest everywhere. It just looks amazing. And it still gives me the creeps and it builds tension and that. What is your favourite part of Aliens? Can you pick a point when you think that's fucking perfect?
I mean, I love the board table scene at the beginning. As again, before anything can happen, just because how much I love Sigourney Weaver in that scene. She just does not take any shit off them. Just the amount of pushback that she does in that scene against, and I think that's the moment where you realize that she is going to absolutely boss it in this film. I mean, incredible performance.
Yeah.
Best Actress nomination. Like, who gets a Best Actress nomination for that kind of film? Only Sigourney Weaver, only because she raised her game that much. So that's one of my favorite sort of acting scenes, I would say. I did earlier mention the face huggers in the lab scene, but the thing I love about that scene is that it starts off so tenderly. It's like one of the nicest scenes between Ripley and Newt, and it's almost like bedtime stories. We're kind of cuddling up. We're having this moment of respite in the middle of the film. It's building. This is what Cameron's screenwriting is so good at. That every scene has multiple functions. So that scene builds their relationship really nicely, and you feel this kind of intimacy. Newt feels protected and so forth. And then suddenly the scuttling begins, and you're like, oh shit, they've got face huggers in there. And then just the editing of that sequence is brilliant. Her using the sprinklers to try and alert everyone, and like, you know that Burke is on the outside and he's shutting it off, and that's the moment also that again Burke is revealed to be the villain in that sequence. We add another layer. There's so much going on in like that 3 or 4 minutes of screen time. It's so exciting, and you don't know. Like the face hugger might get its thing down new. You don't know when the first time you watch it. It's like, is that going to happen? It's really edge of your seat stuff. I think that would have to be maybe my absolute peak in the film.
Yeah. It's also highly quotable, isn't it? Like,
it's very quotable, yeah.
Lots of things. Game over, man!
All of that, yeah. Everything Bill Paxton as Hudson says in the movie is very quotable.
Is golden, yeah.
And also just, again, setting up the characters against each other at the beginning. Have you ever been mistaken for a man? No, have you? From Bette Goldstein to Bill Paxton is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I love her relationship with the Gorman character, who she can't stand, and Drax as well, her buddy, all of them, so quotable. And also Ripley's contempt for Lance Henriksen as well, and just like distrust of him for like the first hour and a half of screen time until the very moment when he comes back with the ship to rescue her. She still doesn't trust him until then, because Ash in Alien casts such a long shadow on her psyche, and she's like, it's one of these fucking androids who's going to mess me up. That's great continuity from the first film.
Have you ever met anyone who doesn't like aliens yet? Because I don't think I've really met them.
I wouldn't want to spend much time with them. I don't think. I can imagine people trying to push a strong case that Alien is the better film, like a purer film, a more sort of beautiful, elegant conception in a way. Whereas Aliens is a bit more rough and ready. You've got this kind of militaristic element. It's more of an action movie. In a way, it's a little bit kind of trashier or more cartoonish, I suppose. But there's still a real elegance to it. I still think it's shot amazingly, edited amazingly.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of wouldn't touch it in a way. The special edition I have seen maybe a couple of times. I probably wouldn't routinely go back to watch that version of it, because I feel like it just needs the extra pace that you gain from cutting out those 20 minutes. But I quite like the robot shooting machines that they bring out at one point. That's quite fun. But yeah, I don't think it needed to be 2.5 hours long. Let's put it that way.
We got a little question before we go on to worst. It's one of our sneaky ones, which is, so this is not your worst ever sequel, but what is the most disappointing sequel? So it doesn't have to be a bad sequel. So you went in really hot and you came out really cold, kind of thing. It doesn't even have to be a bad film.
That's a good question. I've just thought of one, but I really didn't rate Jurassic World. I really don't think that's a good film. None of them are good, but the one where you realise, oh no, they're not going to make this good now. It's just going to be bad now for kind of, we've lowered the level and it's going to be bad now. That was Jurassic World. It was so lame, and it never got over the major issue, which is like, why are you doing this again?
Yes.
It's like when there's one question you can kind of ask that basically undermines the entire film, I feel like you need to solve that question quite firmly in your redrafting of the script, and just address it, get it right, and make the audience feel like they're not being treated like idiots. I'm not going to say that that Twisters is as bad as that, but Twisters still has that problem. What, your friends all just died of this, why have you gone out and done it again? I still can't quite get over it.
I can see that.
Yeah.
At least Twisters is kind of fun. Like,
it is
whereas,
fun,
yeah, I think Jurassic World has lots of problems. All three of those movies have lots of problems, but I think they get progressively worse. I think of the three, the first one's probably the better one. I say better, the most sit-throughable one. Whereas by the time you get to Dominion,
no, that was
just trash. Yeah.
But the second one, which I don't really like, there's one thing about it, which is that it still looks like a J.A. Bayona film. It's weird. Like that, the location they choose for the auction or whatever's going on, that weird cast. I feel like I'm in one of his sets from like the orphanage or something. There's a kind of auteurishness to it that I'm not saying is redemptive, but at least it makes it a little bit more distinctive than the other two, because I don't think Colin Trevorrow has any visual sense at all.
It's got that kind of gothic horror kind of feel to it, hasn't it?
They went for that, and it's just a little one thing to hang on to.
Yeah, they took some swings, unlike World or Dominion. When you went into the first time into World, were you just going to go like, okay, let's see how this is different, or if it can be good? Did you have any high hopes at all?
I'm not going to say my hopes were that high, but my hopes are probably like Jurassic 3 level, and that Jurassic Park 3 is not. It's not great, but it's kind of perfectly fun as a popcorn movie. It's totally fine. And I just thought, come on, guys, let's keep Jurassic Park going. And they just no. I just thought it seems like aggressively corporate, and it seemed like they lost the kind of edge and fun that it had in the first place, because it's basically a kind of family friendly-ish horror film about dinosaurs. That's the concept. And they'd scraped all of that away to make it just kind of ruthlessly safe and like 4 quadrants, like no one's going to object to this. The characters are all going to be hella bland. We're not going to like anyone really. And we're going to make a lot of the minor characters just very, very grating and sort of deliberately annoying, because we're going to kill them quickly and all that kind of stuff. Like just kind of lazy tricks in the screenwriting. Yeah, it wasn't good. And
kind of mean-spirited in a way. Like the other Jurassic movies are kind of the people that get eaten, sort of are bad people, you know, like not, like lawyers, you know, that kind of thing. Like people that show themselves not to be great. Samuel L. Jackson aside, you know, they kind of, the people that die, kind of, you feel like it's justified. Whereas in Jurassic World, it's just anyone. Just kids, it's anyone, you know,
anyone who uses a mobile phone. Yeah, anyone who uses a mobile phone gets kind of plucked by pterodactyls or whatever.
Absolutely.
It just had absolutely no showmanship. That's the thing. That's what separates a Trevorrow from a Spielberg, basically.
Was it when Bryce Dallas Howard was able to outrun the T-Rex in high heels? That's one of the.
And also, don't get me started on her character, which the film just hates. The film hates her, in quite an aggressive way, and I'm like, no, this is not what we want right now. That was a pretty steep letdown. I'm not going to say it was the worst sequel ever made, but I came out pretty bummed when I saw that.
Tim, what's your worst sequel?
Okay, so out of nowhere, I came up with this one because I'm sure I could have plucked, you know, something 7 or something 12 or whatever, as you might do. I'm not sure I've seen all of those franchises to the bitter end, but I decided to go for a film without a number in it.
Lovely.
And I've chosen Along Came a Spider.
I really like this choice. I think it's a good choice.
I didn't even know it was a sequel, so this is great for me.
It's a 2001 thriller based on a novel by James Patterson, and it is the second attempt to bring his work to the screen with Morgan Freeman in the lead role as a forensic psychologist, I should say, called Dr. Alex Cross. The first one was Kiss the Girls from 1997, which was a fairly bog standard kind of serial killer movie, post-Seven, with Freeman and Ashley Judd in it. Yeah. And I don't rate that film very highly. I think it's quite sleazy and quite trashy.
But it's okay. It's fine. You know, it's like fine. Yeah.
Fine. But one of the things that really bothers me about Along Came a Spider is that they decided, right, this franchise is the one we're going to now push forward with this, and they chose this book. Now, before the film came out, for some reason, I just decided I'm going to read the novel, and I don't often do that with just some random crime writer, but I just thought, I've never read any of James Patterson's books. So I picked up Along Came a Spider and I read it, and it is one of the worst books I've ever read. It is page by page, sentence by sentence, atrocious. I'm not surprised that Stephen King has actually vocally said, James Patterson is terrible. How has he made so much money? Stephen King, who's normally very nice about other, very collegiate, let's say, about other genre writers, has basically just put himself on the line and said, this guy is awful. So I read the book and I was already like, oh God, the main female character is called Jessie Flanagan, which is, again, one of the worst names I can think of. And I was bracing myself, but I didn't know how badly Lee Tamahori was going to botch this exercise. So this was just before he made Die Another Day, with the truly infamous CGI stuff at the end of that. Has anyone chosen Die Another Day yet for your podcast?
No, they haven't, but they should.
No one's really picked Bonds, weirdly.
No, they really must. Yeah. One day you need Die Another Day, because holy shit.
Oh, we did a 20th year anniversary episode of it last year, I think. So me and Rich have sat through it. And it's the worst Bond.
It's bad. It's not the worst. Well, I don't know. I think Quantum of Solace is worse just for me, but it is bad. It is bad.
But anyway, Tim, please keep.
The weird specialism that Lee Tamahori has around this time is that he is the worst person at handling CGI there was in Hollywood. If he directed a film, it would have some god-awful CGI in it. So Die Another Day has the infamous kind of ice surfing stuff at the end. The Triple X sequel, has anyone chosen that?
No, that's bad as well.
Horrific bit where Ice Cube comes flying off some train tracks and kind of flies towards the camera. And Along Came the Spider has the opening sequence where Morgan Freeman's partner dies in a car crash and gets tipped over the edge. Oh dear, it looks terrible. And rewatching it for this, I was like, yeah, that is some of the worst CGI of its era. Tamahori had made 3 okay films. He'd made Once Were Warriors, which is good.
Yeah.
And then he'd made Mulholland Falls. And then he'd made The Edge, which I quite like, which is a David Mamet scripted movie with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin. But then he made this. And it kind of sums up everything that, like, the post-Silence of the Lambs, post-Seven serial killer movie decided it had to have certain things in it. And all of them are stuffed into this film, and all of them are really stupid. Like the disguise that the killer wears throughout the first 20 minutes.
So bad.
So bad. It's Michael Wincott under these flabby prosthetics playing a kind of tweedy school teacher. And you're like, you are covered in flabby prosthetics because you are presumably the villain / killer. You just see right through it. And you're like, how is no one else in this school not going, what is wrong with your face? So anyway, there are just many, many, many things wrong with this film in terms of the execution, but I'm almost objecting more to the idea of making it at all, because there are so many better books you could have done.
I just think the whole kind of like, I'm going to spoil this for people that haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it now and then come back. Actually, don't go and watch it. It's not worth it. But it's just all so like convenient. Like they just everything. It's just like, oh, this just happened to happen, so we did this, and we thought we'd get away with it if it wasn't for you pesky detectives. Like,
it does have a bit of a Scooby-Doo quality. It just nothing about it is credible. The Secret Service agent that Monica Potter is playing just seems like a complete moron until she reveals more about her motivation.
And then she seems even more like a moron.
Exactly. Like, how was your plan intended to work? I also love, there are some really genuinely funny things in it, like the IT teacher, which Michael Wincott is playing at the beginning in this boys' school, has a private office that is like bigger than probably, the Secretary of State. It's this wood-paneled room with this fireplace, and you're like, what is going on here? Which production designer decided this would be credible, or this would kind of make us feel this is gritty and real, and we're buying into the kidnapping of this child, which is all about. And then the ridiculous stuff on the boat when he traps the girl on the boat, and she's in like a little kind of stuffed into a little cabin, except the lighting has this kind of spiderweb crisscross effect because look, it's the spider's lair, and like all of this bullshit. Like every single like pseudo artistic touch in the film is just the most hokey bit of hack work.
Yeah.
I'm half expecting Michael Wincott every time to go, but why a spoon, cousin? And I'm like,
yeah, I mean, if a film is even making Michael Wincott boring, you're in trouble. Because the man is usually very good.
Yeah.
But this was not a good part for him to take.
No, it wasn't.
So you read the book, and that was rubbish. And then Did you have to review it? Did you go to a screening, or was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I did. I remember having to review it, in 2001, and I was braced for it to be as terrible as the book.
Good.
And it kind of lives up to how terrible the book is. If I say one thing for it, it's like it doesn't do anything to improve the book. And oh, good God, I feel like some of the acting in it is like really dismal in the supporting roles as well, just kind of needlessly dismal walk-on roles. Also, let's talk about Morgan Freeman for a minute, because I feel like clearly after Seven, much beloved Morgan Freeman, he had been on such a great role. He'd done Shawshank Redemption and then Seven, and they're like, right, we need to give him a franchise. He's very good in Seven as William Somerset. Let's give him a kind of detective franchise. So they go out hunting, and they choose this one. I'm like, it's so sad, because surely they could have written a good character for him to kind of play, and then he would have had his franchise, and we'd have bought into it, and we'd have been excited for whatever he's coming up with next. But they just plucked the worst books possible, and he just kind of tries to invest it with his default gravitas. And when you see him doing that, I just find it kind of sad, because I'm like, Morgan, can't you read? Come on. Have better taste in scripts. Don't just do default gravitas.
But in both these movies, Alex Cross has very little bearing on the outcome. He almost solves these crimes by accident. Like, he's supposed to be this super detective, and there's nothing. It uses intelligence to solve these crimes. It's
he gets lucky on both times.
Yeah, it stumbles across it. Yeah.
Totally. He's like a bumbling, almost like Inspector Clouseau figure. It's like it just happens to him. The forensic psychology has so little role to play in this film. It's just a bunch of twists that are suddenly sprung on the audience, and then the characters have to play catch up and kind of go, oh, wait, it's this guy. Yeah, and it just makes everyone seem stupid.
Yeah.
One of the things I quite remember about Kiss the Girls is it had a classic mid-90s trailer with Trailer Voice Man in it.
Right.
And it's the most, if you ever want to hear the prime example of this kind of trailer, it's the one to dig out, because it begins with kind of, clanking sounds of a dungeon, and then the man kind of goes, for forensic psychologist Alex Cross, life was always orderly and always, calculated, or something like that. But then someone just made it scary, or whatever it is, and it's just like the most stupid parody of a trailer. And yeah, you wouldn't really be able to pastiche it much better.
No, I've literally just finished watching Kiss the Girls, because I watched the bad one.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll go back and see the difference, or the motivation. And the first one compared to the second one, I think it feels good.
It probably does if you watch this straight after.
It feels scary, but in the second film, it's like, we're going to kidnap a child, and it feels almost safe, to be honest. It doesn't have the danger that the first one has.
But we don't really want to kidnap that child. We want to kidnap a different child. We're just using that child as a bit of a... It's like... No,
no sense.
I didn't really understand what was going on in that second one.
Why would they not just kidnap the child they need to kidnap straight away?
Yeah.
If it's that easy to lure one of these school children into your wood-panelled office with the fireplace, drug them, and smuggle them out of the room in your weird little computer trolley, why wouldn't you just go for the main one first? It just makes zero sense.
No, there's no sense at all. Also, for me, this film feels older than the first one.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I watched them both sort of back to back, essentially, and I thought, have I got these the wrong way round? Because I know it's early noughties, so it still feels quite 90s, but it still feels really dated. Like, really kind of...
It's so crummy. I mean, it's kind of like Hollywood hack work at its most lazy, and just kind of like, this will do. We've already got... You can see the kind of executives thinking behind it, because Kiss the Girls cost about $25 million and made like $60 million. So you're like, okay, we're sort of... We can build on this. Let's do it. We've got Freeman back in. He'll do it again. And then you just cast a slightly up-and-coming actor opposite him, so you get Monica Potter this time, who I don't think is at all convincing in either of the functions that her role has.
No.
Does not work for her in that part.
And I quite like her. I think she's good in other things, but yeah, anyway.
Weird bit of casting.
Yeah.
To me, it's a waste of a window that they had to give Morgan Freeman a really good franchise. And like other actors would pick, like, look at someone like Harrison Ford in the 90s, who was being given Jack Ryan, and you kind of get You can get a couple of those, and other actors have better stuff to work with.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman was just saddled with this, and I'm like, don't do another one, Morgan. Come on, call it quits.
This is the last Morgan Freeman Alex Cross, but I think there's been what's his name? Something Perry has done one, and then recently I think
Tyler Perry did one. Yeah, the thing is that James Patterson's books sell a lot of copies.
Yes,
he has huge readership, and so that probably was a built-in thing that they thought, well, people will come to this.
And they're about to do a TV series.
Are they? Yeah.
So
I will never read another sentence by this.
I did wonder when you mentioned this film. I was like, oh, he must be a big fan of the books. No,
I'm like, it depresses me even more in a way. Okay, sure. If they take a book and they screw it up, Bonfire of the Vanities or whatever it might be, that is quite a miserable thing to sit through. But also, if they take a really terrible book and they don't make it any better than it is, because I think personally that the film of 50 Shades of Grey is wildly better than the book, wildly, and it's still not very good, and we could laugh at it and point out all the stupidities of it, but it is so much better than the book, which I had to read. I was literally told you have to read the book before you review that film because everyone needs to know how it compares, and I was like, well, the book is one of the most kind of hacky bits of shit I've ever read in my life, and every decision they made with the film was embarrassed about the book.
Yeah,
you can tell they were like, we need to make her, Anastasia's character, less dislikable. We need to cast someone smart. We need to get the screenwriting better. We need to edit it better. We need to kind of make her not a total moron, and they actually do succeed in doing that. So I'm impressed when they take something shit and improve it. But when they take something this bad and they just make it something equally bad, I'm like, what is the point? And why does no one have the discernment to realize that they could have chosen a good book in the first place? There were so many James Ellroy books out there that have not been adapted.
Yeah,
I can't believe we're getting a TV series of this, and they've cancelled Mindhunter. Like, come on,
man.
Like,
mad, isn't it?
Yeah,
just ridiculous.
Got another little question for you before we move on to the next one.
Sure.
Which is, what sequel seemed like a bad idea, but you ended up liking?
I don't know if I've fully come up with the right answer to your question.
There's no wrong answers.
Well, one of the candidates that I would have been toying with alongside Aliens, just because I think it really does raise the game of the first film, is The Bourne Supremacy. I think The Bourne Supremacy is an absolute banger. And I probably was excited for it to a degree, but I thought The Bourne Identity was sort of okay. I didn't think it was great. And I thought, I guess maybe the thing is it left so much room for improvement, and it left so much room for directorial improvement.
Yes.
And Paul Greengrass just jumped in and just jazzed it up so much with his particular style. I also think Tony Gilroy just did a much smoother job with it, writing it, expanding the character, and doing a lot of those things where you just kind of make it all bigger and better. So that film definitely exceeded my expectations, that's for sure.
That's a really good shout. No one's actually mentioned Bourne, I think.
I think it's a huge jump between the first one and the second one.
Big jump, and I don't think that Bourne Ultimatum quite sustains it on the same level, because you can see they're sort of trying to copy Supremacy again a bit too much. It has too many of the same elements just brought back in. We bring in a new actor. We do a big car chase, except because the big car chase is in New York, we've got like half a lane of a highway to use instead of Moscow, where they just get the whole of it.
Yeah.
There are just aspects of the Bourne Ultimatum which I think are a little bit more strained, but I still like it.
What about the other ones? Is there, or the fourth one, the one that people
Legacy.
seem to want to forget? Oh no! Oh yeah, forget about Legacy.
I actually don't mind Legacy. I think Legacy is a weird film because it doesn't have Bourne in it. It's quite strange, but there are bits of it that I really like, and Tony Gilroy is just kind of like pulling stuff out of nowhere to make that film kind of work. And there's that whole bit in the middle where Jeremy Renner's character, or is it Rachel Weisz's character, one of them gets sort of tricked into hanging out in this house with them, been talking to these psychiatrists, and then they turn out to be like the guys trying to kill her or something. I thought that was very good. Anyway, there's bits of that film I quite like, but I don't like Jason Bourne, and that was really disappointing actually. So that's the flip side to your question. Now, Jason Bourne was very disappointing because I thought, Greengrass and Damon back together. Here we go, let's do it. And the cast was so promising. The missing element is just the script. Paul Greengrass is not really a writer, and the script just isn't there. it just doesn't have the layers, and it doesn't have the kind of the tensions you need to kind of sustain it. So losing Tony Gilroy was a bad thing for that franchise.
Yeah. Do you think there's any hope for any more? Would you go back to another Bourne?
After Jason Bourne, I was a bit like, oh, I think that might be it, honestly, because I just thought they did botch it. Yeah, I've been quite disappointed with most Paul Greengrass stuff lately, actually. Since still like Captain Phillips, but since then, I just don't think it's been good. So I don't know. I think Bourne might have been played out by now. And sometimes with these sort of franchises, I feel like I'd rather have a fresh one anyway. I'm getting a bit bored of Mission Impossible, quite honestly. I'm a bit like, there's just so many more characters being added all the time. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll watch the next one, great. But can we maybe draw a line after that? They've started to lose money a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's sort of becoming a bit Fast and Furious-y, isn't it now? Yeah, it's a bit soapy. Like, I understand.
One of my problems with those very long-running franchises, exactly like Fast and Furious and like Mission Impossible and like Bond, is when you do too many in a row that are very successful and you add characters and they survive, then they all have to kind of come back every single time, and it just bogs the film down. You have to have a scene with so and so. In the Sam Mendes Bond films, they had so much baggage on them, and No Time to Die as well. Why do we need Christoph Waltz coming back in that? Like, why do we need scenes with Rory Kinnear and every single other character? Sometimes I just want to wipe the slate clean and just kind of go off on a taut new side mission somewhere with just only characters we've never met. But the best way to do that is just to bring you an entirely new franchise, basically, entirely new character.
I was about to say, is that what you're hoping from where they go with the new Bonds? Just like change it up
I would love a fresh slate, but I don't think we're going to get that, are we? Because I just feel like they've introduced, Lashana Lynch, and we've got Ralph Fiennes still hanging around, and we've still got Naomi Harris. I feel like all of them, their agents will just be like on the case.
Are you thinking we're going to stick in that world then? They're not going to retool it at all?
I feel like all of those associate characters will still be around.
Oh, wow.
In the same way that Judi Dench stayed.
Oh, I guess so, yeah.
They moved from Brosnan to Daniel Craig. But I might be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love it just to be a fresh slate.
Yeah. Did you have to review like Bourne Supremacy in the first place, or was that?
That one I did review, actually, yeah. I think I reviewed that, and I reviewed Legacy. I don't remember reviewing Ultimatum, but I gave Supremacy a real rave. I thought it was like not just the kind of action movie of probably that decade, but almost maybe one of my films of the year, and that was a good year, 2004.
Yeah, it was really cool. I remember going to see the first one, and I think I had a bad time with it because my two friends invited me, and I thought I was going to go see it with two mates, and then they both turned up with their girlfriends. So for ages, that first Bourne Identity, I just hated. I just remember sitting through it and be like, I don't want to be here. And then Supremacy came out. I was like, this is fucking brilliant.
It's a good jump up, I agree, yeah. And again, Identity is one of those films where you can kind of see the scars because they reshot so much of it, they had so much trouble with it to make it work. Like Clive Owen's character doesn't make any sense, and he's barely in it, and like, look at what they make you give, and all of that stuff. It's just a bit cringe. There's lots of bits in it that don't work.
But it's got a good mini chase.
It has got a good mini chase.
And it has Franca Potente. I really like Franca Potente, and when we get her for a tiny bit of the Bourne Supremacy at the beginning.
I thought that was really brave. When she died, I was like, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be a big deal.
It's that rare time. We look for sequels like this that are better than the original, and there aren't many. This is a very rare occurrence, really.
I would say Supremacy is much better than Identity, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good jump up, yeah. So that's the one that's sprung to mind. I'm sure I could probably think of examples in horror where the second or third ones are much better than the first.
Yeah.
But none of them are immediately springing to mind.
No, I mean, we watched Exorcist 3 not long ago, and that is better than 2 by a long way. Yeah.
Psycho 2's not bad for a sequel, to be honest. I quite sat through that.
I like Psycho 2, yeah. Psycho 2 is good. Psycho 2, probably you expect it to be bad.
Yeah.
And it is surprisingly good. Yeah.
That'd be the answer to my perfect question, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer to your question, which I should have given.
What did you pick as dream sequel?
So it's almost springing off the one we were just talking about. So 90s cop franchise, black leading actor, and it's a movie that did not get a sequel because it didn't make enough money, basically, and it's a bit sad. And this is Devil in a Blue Dress from 1995. Now, this is Denzel Washington's attempt to start a new franchise, really. I think they very much were intending for that to be the case. It's based on one of the books by Walter Mosley, who is a genuinely excellent writer of crime fiction, several of whose books I've read, and his main character is called Easy Rawlins, and he's this kind of New Orleans dude who gets in and out of different scrapes, solves murders, and so forth. And Columbia, I think it was, made this film in 1995. It was TriStar, pretty much, Sony Columbia. And it was intended as like Denzel's going to go genre here for us, and in period as well, and it is beautiful. It's shot by Tak Fujimoto, who shot Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, wow. And
also had form with shooting Denzel Washington. I think he shot Philadelphia as well. I don't think Denzel Washington has ever looked better than he does in this film. I think that just like every shot of him is like a portrait from Life magazine. It's incredible. The period stylings are great, but also the plot really works. It has a kind of nice laid back vibe at the beginning, and you kind of think it might just be a bit of a mooch around 1940s LA, in fact, where this one's set. Some of them are in New Orleans, I think. But then it generates quite a lot of edge and tension as it goes on. Jennifer Beals has this role in it, and it's a good use of her, and there are not many of those in the 90s. Jennifer Beals had a good part in this. And the rest of the supporting cast, Tom Sizemore was good, and Don Cheadle had a real moment in this film. I think it was the first time people kind of realized that he could be a bit of a powerhouse, Don Cheadle. Yeah. He's almost like the equivalent of the Joe Pesci character in Goodfellas. He's just he's this kind of explosive rat-like character. He's great. So on all fronts, this was a good translation of a Walter Mosley novel with Denzel Washington kind of on very authoritative form. It's just it didn't take off. It cost 22 million, and it recouped almost exactly that, I think. Wow. The box office.
22 million doesn't seem a lot for this kind of period movie. It's essentially a film noir, isn't it? Really, like it's got a lot of those beats. It's almost the exact opposite of Alex Cross in the last movie. Is that Denzel's character Easy Rawlins is set out to be not really the smartest guy, and kind of falls into all sorts of problems and stuff, but ends up actually having quite a knack for solving murders, essentially, so, figuring these things out. And it's almost like the opposite, whereas Alex Cross is supposed to be like this super kind of detective, and actually does everything by accident.
That's a very good point, because Easy Rawlins is like laid off at the beginning of this film, and he doesn't know what he's doing. It's a bit of a layabout. And he just stumbles into this case and ends up being sharper at solving it than any of the actual people being employed to do that, like the private investigator.
He's very reluctant to do it as well. It's just,
exactly.
They keep flashing money under. He's like, okay, we'll go a bit further. We'll go a bit further at this.
And being Walter Mosley, there's a lot of really interesting kind of racial tensions in the film as well, about the kind of police, of course, the LAPD, and Rawlins's relationship with them. So there's these kind of nice layers to it, but it's very... it's a languorous, cool film. Yeah, and I just wish it had found an audience in 1995, because we could have had another one, and it would probably have been quite a lot better than Along Came a Spider. It's funny because the same year that they made this one, they also tried to get James Lee Burke, who's another crime writer I really like, off to the races with an Alec Baldwin movie called Heaven's Prisoners. Have you ever seen that? In fact, it's 1 year later. Heaven's Prisoners was a New Line adaptation of James Lee Burke, with Alec Baldwin in the lead role as the cop who's in all of those books. He's called Dave Robichaux. And again, quite a similar vibe. Not bad, but again, that one was a real flop. That film cost 25 million, and it made like $5 million. So it was absolutely water, unfortunately. Whereas the Denzel one, it broke even, but they're never going to clamour for a sequel to a movie that doesn't turn a profit, unfortunately.
No.
When did you come to this film?
I don't think I definitely wouldn't have seen it in the cinema, because I don't think it got much of a UK release, The Devil in the Blue Dress, in 95, and probably got a little small one. I think I probably caught it. I reckon I would have caught it on video. I spent some time in the late 90s in LA, and a few summers out there, and I reckon I'd have seen it on, caught up with it on VHS, maybe in 96, 97, something like that. And I've gone back to it more recently. I saw it maybe 2 years ago or something. I think I might have watched it during lockdown, just thinking, good Sunday afternoon movie.
It is good for that.
Yeah, I was particularly struck by just how great the photography is in it, and how great Denzel looks in every shot, just the hats he's wearing.
He's such a fucking star, isn't he, Denzel? Like,
really is, yeah.
One of the greatest.
Yeah, so I'm a bit sad that didn't turn into something that he could have carried on with,
Have you read any other books that
I've read a couple of them, yeah. The next one in the series is good, and what's that one called? They tend to jump forward like 5 years at a time, essentially. So the next one along, I think it's called A Red Death, and that's about a communist conspiracy.
Oh, okay.
I recall. And there's one called White Butterfly after that. They were all written in the early 90s, like 1991, 92. And so, the attempt to make some hay with them cinematically didn't quite pan out. But it's really not a bad film at all. And I think, it's a pity.
Would you have wanted one of those books as an adaptation? Would you have wanted to kind of do it in order? What's your vision for the next one?
It would have made sense to go forward to one of the next ones along. There's the next one is called White Butterfly after Red Death. That one I have not read actually, but maybe they were put off by the commie thing in Red Death.
Yeah.
Perhaps they were looking at them that might have perturbed them a little bit. That White Butterfly is more of a murder mystery from the looks of things. Got very good reviews when it came out in like 1992, so they could have gone for that one. But there were so many opportunities to, like, the supporting cast in these films could have been so interesting because Devil in a Blue Dress has a great supporting cast.
When you get Tom Sizemore in the mid-90s, man.
You're doing well,
He is terrifying. Do you think if they released this film now, as in Denzel and you got Don Cheadle, would it be more success?
I think the thing these days is that it's one of those mid-budgety films that would be a streaming thing, right?
Yeah,
it might be a series. It might be something that Apple or Netflix would toy with as a one-off feature, like all those movies they keep seeming to make with Eddie Murphy in them. It's like there's kind of nostalgia trips for Eddie Murphy. I don't know. I think it would struggle to get theatrical kind of heat on it, if you like, because so many films of that level just don't get that anymore. But then the compensation is that we get a good series instead now. So we get Mayor of Easttown or something like that. Kate Winslet gets that role in a series, where in the 90s they might have tried to stuff that into one film. So perhaps that's what they would do these days. Maybe they'll have another go. Because, Walter Mosley is a name to reckon with and has a big fan base as well.
Is there a director you would think would go with that?
I think the perfect director was Carl Franklin, who did Devil in a Blue Dress. I really like Carl Franklin. He made some great films in the 90s. He made One False Move with Bill Paxton from 1992, which is a cracking film. Really, really good, quite kind of punchy indie. Bill Paxton's finest hour, I'm going to say. And then he later reteamed with Denzel and made Out of Time, which is around 2000.
I remember that one.
You know the one? Yeah, it's a bit creaky, but I had some fun with it.
It came very out at the same time as like Deja Vu, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was around the same time as that. Yeah. So he was sort of perfect to do Devil in a Blue Dress in 95. I think you need a black director, actually. And I don't know these days who I would leap for.
Yeah, because he's doing mostly kind of TV now, isn't he, I think? Because talking to Mindhunter again, he did a few episodes of Mindhunter, I remember.
He's very much a crime specialist. He's done several other kind of crime movies. He's stuck in that. I kind of admire that when a director's kind of stick, like a bit like John Dahl, he just stuck to his kind of noir guns when he made Red Rock West and then Last Seduction and so on. That was his thing. But I don't know, maybe Ryan Coogler, if he is ever extricated from the Marvel universe, he could make quite a cool Walter Mosley movie.
Yeah, I think he could.
Get Denzel on board.
Those were Tim Robey's Unequal Sequels. I say this a lot, but that's one of my favourites.
It's a great chat. I loved having a chat with him. Great picks, great guy. Can't wait to read his book, but we'll get to that in a minute. Yes, let's talk about his picks quickly.
I mean,
Best
aliens. I mean, it's the right answer, isn't it?
It's one of the right
It's
answers.
one of the right answers. You know, it'd be one of the ones it's one of the ones when we first thought about this podcast, we were like, aliens is the prime example.
Every time someone picks one of these, you know, big picks like The Dark Knight or Aliens or Terminator, me and you both think, okay, we have to try and attack it from a different point of view, and hopefully we do that for listeners. But
that always seems to happen because everybody's experience of it is different, right? So it's not even the movie isn't even the important thing. it's the memories. It's the experience the person has of watching that movie, and that's why it doesn't matter if we have people picking the same best sequel multiple times, because everyone's experience of it is different.
Also, it's absolutely delightful when I pick and choose when I want to watch good films again.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes we don't have to watch so and so again because we've watched it a lot, but watching Aliens is not a difficult thing to do. It's just like, oh, fucking, let's just watch a good film for once and really like it. And Aliens is so good. So good. And you know, in the episode we talk about that we're about to see Alien Romulus.
Oh, really? God, was it that long ago that we recorded that one?
Yeah. So we've now seen Alien Romulus and we kind of like it, apart from the last 15 minutes.
And I would say, talking about things we didn't like quite so much.
Yes.
Tim's worst sequel, Along Came a Spider. Also, an interesting choice.
I didn't even know it was a sequel.
No, me neither.
First off, because I didn't know this was a franchise. I knew the film existed, and I know and Kiss the Girl was the first one. I knew there were films.
Yeah.
But I've never put them together.
No.
Like, as in, even though both like Morgan Freeman and stuff. And I've watched both of them now. The first one is certainly the better of the two of those films. Along Came a Spider is pretty bad.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I still have a bit of a 90s crush on Monica Potter. That will never go. But
absolutely,
she's quite bad in this movie. Everyone's bad in this movie, though. It's not just her.
The special effects is bad at the beginning. The guy's disguise when he's trying to be is so bad. The teacher, it's like you're clear. It's really off-putting when you first see him. You're like, that guy's in a disguise and no one else. The FBI haven't worked it out or anything. It's horrific.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's just not a very good film. It's really quite
isn't.
boring.
Yeah, it's really quite dull.
If you watch the first one, Kiss the Girls, which is also, that's actually a little bit dark and a bit tense in places.
Yeah, this one thinks it's really clever but isn't. Like it's one of those kind of movies that's like, it's but trying to be too clever for its own good, and then
they kidnap a girl, and the kidnapped girl gets away in the first 40 minutes.
But then also you're like, it has all the twists and stuff in it, but then they're so obvious. You're like, well, yeah, obviously.
It's rubbish. Do you know what's not obvious though?
What's that?
His dream sequel pick.
Dream sequel pick. I really like that. Devil in a Blue Dress.
Never seen it. Never heard of it.
No, me either. And I'm really glad he picked it because I really liked it.
Denzel Washington does not make bad films. He's so cool, and he's just a master of the craft. And Don Cheadle's in it as well.
Yeah,
it's a really nice, like, is the right term film noir for something like this?
Yeah, it is a noir, definitely. I love a noir. I really. That's one of my genres.
Because if they get that wrong, like that period and the way they're trying to do it, they don't do well and they look rubbish. And this is one of the better ones. And I agree with Tim. I think it would be nice to see a few more of those stories from that character.
Absolutely. I want to see
Denzel.
what the character's grown into,
Yeah.
Like this really is the start of his journey, and there's more interesting stories to tell, surely.
What trouble he gets himself into. Apparently there's a few more books. So there was definitely
material
room to go. And Denzel doesn't do sequels very often. I know he's about to do Gladiator 2. But can you think of any other Denzel sequels that he's done?
Well, the Equalizer ones.
That's his franchise, you're right.
Yeah. He's done those. Which again, I really enjoy. Like they're not like high cinema or anything, but they're fun.
They're good entertainment, solid entertainment, and the man always delivers. So yeah, great picks from Tim. Thank you very much, Tim, for picking those films. Tim is a great film critic for the Telegraph. You might have read a lot of his reviews, but more excitingly, what I was excited about when we got Tim on, he's just written a book that's coming out on November the 7th in the UK and the 5th in the US, 2024.
Just in time to get the film fan in your life something for Christmas.
Exactly.
That's a hint, by the way, if my wife is listening.
Called Box Office Poison, and it's about this Hollywood story in a century of flops. So it's about lots of flops over the century, and they so much up our street, Rich. Like, especially our disenfranchised stuff on Another Slice.
Yeah.
Like he talks about in the book about Speed 2 and Catwoman. I cannot wait to read it. I think it's going to be fucking fascinating to read it, and hilarious and funny.
Talking of Another Slice, we really go into depth on the flops and being a journalist and stuff with Tim. It's a really good sequel sessions that you'll find over on Another Slice. And he said we were critics.
He did, didn't he? He did, because you made a good point. I remember that. You were so proud.
I was well chuffed.
You see, we should be Rotten Tomato critics by now.
We should. We just need more ratings on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you listen on Apple Podcasts and you like this strange podcasty thing that we put together, then do give us a rating. 5 stars would be lovely. We're trying to get to 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts, because then we can get ourselves on Rotten Tomatoes as certified critics, which would be incredible. And our rating system is out of 7, which I have a feeling will really mess up their algorithm somehow.
Or it'll mess up our system.
Or it'll mess up our system. So I don't know. But either way, I really want them to do it. It would be so fun for us to be proper critics.
Yeah.
So please do rate us if you're on Apple Podcasts. That would be amazing. Also, while you're there, hit the like button, hit the auto download button, hit the subscribe button, whatever it is you're doing. We'll drop into pod player of choice every single week. Get yourself onto anotherslice.com, where you will be able to get a sequel to this episode. The sequel sessions are over there. It's only $2.99 a month to join up to our subscription service. You can become one of our super special slicers. You'll get an extra bit to all our interview episodes. Sometimes that's the most insightful stuff. That's the bit where we drift off and don't always talk about sequels. We talk about other kind of things as well, and it leads to really kind of interesting conversations. But you'll also get disenfranchised and box set mentality over there too. To do that, let us know what you thought about Tim's picks. We're on all the social medias. We're at Unequal Sequel, even the bad ones, like that one that used to be Twitter. We're there, so you can send us messages. If you don't do social media, get on the email and send us an email. We're unequalsequel@hotmail.com. We will read out all your messages, emails, reviews, whatever, in our end of month roundup.
Perfect. Well done. Thank you, everyone, for listening and supporting and sending in your thoughts and just telling people that we're a good podcast and making those people listen to us. That's very kind of you. Thank you for Tim for coming onto the podcast and telling us his best, worst and dream sequel. Good luck with the book, Box Office Poison. Please go and buy it if you want and like films.
You definitely should buy it. Or buy it for a person you know who loves movies, and buy it for Christmas.
Yes.
I think that's the thing.
Again, Rich is angling for his wife to buy him the book.
Uh-huh.
We're back again next week for Season 7, Episode 3. Another cracking guest. So looking forward to that one. I've got nothing else to say, so it's a goodbye from me. Oh, yeah, and a goodbye from him.
Bye!
See you on the next one. Sequel to this one. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
You forgot to say me again, didn't you?
I forgot to say bye from me. Which is
oh dear,
quite stupid. I was trying to think, maybe in the future we can give a little clue of who the next guest is. So I don't know if they just got what I said, but it does kind of go with the next week's guest.
Ah, clever.